The champagne glasses clinked like tiny, cruel bells across the grand ballroom of Phoenix Logistics. It was my father, Arthur Vance's 60th birthday gala, and I, his unwanted daughter, stood before 400 of his closest investors. I held a glass of sparkling cider, my throat dry. I started my simple toast, "Dad, I wish you health and happiness." Arthur, who looked like a king in his custom tuxedo, lunged forward, snatching the microphone from my hand. His face, usually a mask of corporate calm, was contorted with hatred. The sound feedback shrieked, silencing the room. "I wish you were never born, Clara," he spat, loud enough that the echoes bounced off the marble walls. "You are a financial mistake and a failure. Spencer is the only Vance who matters." I felt the blood rush from my face. The spotlight felt like a burning interrogation lamp. 400 pairs of eyes looked at me. The failed daughter. What the hell just happened to her? My name is Clara Vance. I am 26 years old, and for a lifetime, my father, Arthur, taught me to apologize for existing. That moment, standing on the stage where I had just been publicly executed by my own blood, was not the end of me. It was the absolute beginning. Arthur didn't just steal my self-respect. He had recently stolen my last inheritance, a $500,000 gift from my grandmother, which I had used to pay off his emergency business loan. He thought I was just a naive girl. He was wrong. I didn't cry. I didn't fight back. I stood there for maybe 3 seconds too long, feeling the heavy, awful silence. Then, I simply placed the glass of cider back on the nearest table, turned my back on the spotlight, and walked off the stage. I didn't look at my mother, Eleanor, whose face was pale with shock, or my smug twin brother, Spencer, who was already smirking into his expensive wine. I walked through the service hallway and straight out the back door into the cool, dark night. I took nothing but the small leather purse holding my ID, my keys, and the one piece of paper Arthur forgot I had, the original, signed loan IOU. I drove my beat-up sedan away from the glittering, cruel lights of Phoenix Logistics until the tower was just a speck. I checked into a cheap motel 60 miles outside the city under a fake name. The motel room was basic, smelling faintly of stale smoke, but it was mine. In the silence, I pulled out the IOU. It was a single sheet of heavy parchment, signed by Arthur. He had told me it was a typical bank loan, but my grandmother's lawyer had hinted it was a personal unsecured debt to a vicious private equity firm known for quick, brutal takeovers. My $500,000 paid the principal, but I suddenly wondered, what about the interest? I spent the next 3 days in the motel room, not grieving, but planning. I pulled up public records for Phoenix Logistics. Arthur had been bragging about his massive, automated warehouse project, Project Firebird, his legacy project. I had an advanced degree in systems engineering, a degree Arthur always mocked, saying I was too delicate for the tech world. Now, that knowledge was my weapon. I found the public blueprints for Firebird's new inventory management system. As I reviewed the design specs for Project Firebird, my hands began to sweat. I recognized the base code. Arthur, in his arrogance, had used a dangerously outdated custom system he bought cheap years ago. I saw it, a tiny, overlooked security loophole in the data routing logic. It wasn't a flaw that would cause immediate failure, but a critical, unpatched vulnerability that would guarantee catastrophic chaos during peak performance, exactly when it would be unveiled publicly. The IOU was the key to his financial doom. I called the lawyer who handled my grandmother's estate, Mr. Doyle, asking him to research the private firm that held the loan, Acheron Capital. Mr. Doyle called me back, his voice tense. "Clara, this isn't a bank. Acheron specializes in vulture finance. They don't do business loans. They buy leverage. And that IOU? It specifies a crippling 18% annual interest rate, with all due interest payable immediately if the company's valuation drops by even 5%. My father had only repaid the principal. He had conveniently ignored the interest, thinking he had time. That interest, compounding for years, was huge. Arthur thought he had escaped the debt, but he was still tethered to Acheron. I realized my payment had only made him complacent, not safe. My plan was simple. I needed to trigger the 5% valuation drop using the flaw in Firebird and simultaneously ensure Acheron Capital called in the debt at that exact moment. I contacted a headhunting agency. I told them I was a highly skilled, independent IT systems specialist looking for a unique contract. Within 48 hours, they connected me to Vantage Distribution, Phoenix's fiercest rival. I accepted a remote, anonymous consulting contract to analyze their competitors, Phoenix's public-facing systems. I had just accepted a job to legally spy on my father's crumbling empire. The consulting job gave me exactly what I needed, confirmation of the vulnerability in Firebird. I drafted an anonymous one-page technical report detailing the security flaw and sent it to Arthur's chief technology officer. I signed it simply, Concerned Systems Engineer. I knew Arthur, in his arrogance, would see the report, scoff at the amateur, and immediately discard it, sealing his fate by ignoring the warning. The next step was the IOU. I contacted Vantage Distribution's legal counsel, maintaining strict anonymity. I offered to sell them a legal document, the $500,000 IOU owed by Arthur Vance to Acheron Capital. I priced it low, but the real value wasn't the money, it was the leverage. The repayment clause is triggered by a valuation drop, I explained. Buy this debt, and you can call it in right when Phoenix Logistics is most exposed. Vantage Distribution bit instantly. They saw the opportunity to crush their rival in one swift, legal move. The transfer was made, a large wire deposit into a new private account I had set up far away from Arthur's scrutiny. I now had the money I had sacrificed, and I had weaponized Arthur's debt against him. I needed another piece of the puzzle, my mother, Eleanor. She still lived in Arthur's mansion, a prisoner of his gaslighting. I drove to a quiet park where she often walked her dog. She looked frail, but her eyes, when she saw me, were sharp and sad. "Clara, where have you been? Your father is demanding Spencer find you." I gave her a small, encrypted memory stick. "Mom, you told me you were documenting his affair with Scarlett. This stick holds everything you need for a quick divorce. Don't file until the day of the Firebird launch. Wait for the signal." Arthur, meanwhile, was growing increasingly confident. Spencer called my motel number, which I stupidly hadn't blocked yet. "Clara, Dad is worried about the Firebird launch. He needs you to come home and just clean up some of his documents. He says he'll give you a few $1,000s. He was trying to bribe the failure back into servitude. I hung up. He still saw me as cheap and disposable. I used the money from the sale of the IOU to rent a secure, small apartment in a completely different state. I started a new remote contract, fully utilizing my IT skills. My life was simple, independent, and focused entirely on the countdown to Firebird's launch, which Arthur had scheduled for 3 weeks away. He needed this project to cement his legacy. I needed it to destroy him. Arthur went on a media blitz, praising Firebird as a technological masterpiece that would revolutionize distribution. He had secured a huge media contract for the live-streamed launch event. Every word he spoke, every boast he made, was another block placed on the tower of his arrogance, a tower I was about to kick over. 2 days before the launch, I received a cryptic text from my mother, Eleanor. "Arthur just bought Scarlett a vintage gold watch. Expense account 401A. Embezzlement." That tiny detail, the use of company funds for his mistress's expensive gift, was the final evidence needed to seal his fate against the IRS. My mother was proving herself to be the quiet, methodical accountant Arthur always undervalued. I logged into a secure terminal and watched the official announcement for the Project Firebird launch ceremony. It was going to be massive, streamed globally. I sent one last encrypted message to the legal team at Vantage Distribution. "The moment the presentation begins, execute the IOU call. The timing is critical." I was sitting hundreds of miles away, but I felt the tension of the final moment closing in. Launch day. I watched the live stream in my quiet apartment. Arthur was on stage, glowing under the studio lights, standing next to Spencer. He looked like the proud architect of a new world. The system was activated. The presentation began, a slow, dramatic demonstration of the automated warehouse sorting and routing millions of inventory units per second. Everything was perfect. Arthur beamed. Then, the first sign of the trap. The camera zoomed in on the main screen showing the stock valuation ticker. As Arthur began his final grand speech, the valuation dropped from $152 per share to $148 per share, a 2.6% drop. It was small, unnoticed by the general public, likely due to a minor market correction. Arthur didn't even flinch. He thought he was safe. But just as he raised his hands to accept applause, a distinguished, serious man in a dark suit walked onto the stage. It was the chief legal officer from Acheron Capital, the firm that now owned the IOU. The lawyer approached Arthur, ignoring the flash of cameras, and served him with a stack of papers. The cameras zoomed in, immediate demand for repayment. Arthur's face went white. He grabbed the papers, his eyes skimming the top sheet. $500,000 principal plus $137,000 in compounded interest, due immediately. He had lost track of the IOU, and the small valuation drop had triggered the clause. Arthur started yelling into the microphone, his voice frantic. "This is impossible. The loan was paid. This is a corporate attack." At that exact moment, the security flaw I had seen in the blueprints executed its purpose. Due to the high-stress, high-volume environment created by Arthur's frantic outburst, the inventory system crashed spectacularly. Lights flashed red, robot arms froze, and millions of units of inventory began routing to the wrong bays, causing total logistical chaos on the live stream. The stock valuation plummeted another 4% in 30 seconds. The stock value hit the floor, and Arthur's empire instantly collapsed. The show was cut short. I got a text from my mother, divorce papers filed. Sent the evidence of Scarlett to the IRS this morning. It's over. Arthur was ruined financially and legally. I watched the news report. Phoenix Logistics was filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Spencer, completely incompetent, was left scrambling to answer questions he didn't understand. I took the long drive back to the city, not to celebrate, but for closure. I went to the mansion, which was now surrounded by legal signs and police tape. I didn't enter. I just stood outside the iron gates, looking at the place where I was publicly destroyed. It was no longer a home. It was a shell of crime and abuse. I knew Arthur would be facing criminal charges for tax evasion based on my mother's evidence. Arthur lost his entire company, his immense wealth, his wife, and his reputation, all because he thought his quiet, failed daughter was too stupid to understand a financial document. He never saw me again. He never got the chance to apologize or threaten. I was free, financially secure with my own income and my returned inheritance. My father said he wished I was never born, but in the end, my birth, my disappearance, and my quiet, calculated return secured his total, devastating ruin. If you felt the sting of those words on the stage, you understand. Respect is non-negotiable. My worth wasn't defined by my father's cruel words or the microphone he snatched away. My story proves that silence can be the most powerful weapon. He thought he had ruined me financially. If this resonated with you, if you've ever been gaslit into feeling like a mistake, share it. Tell them, your IT skills don't make you weak. Your planning makes you unstoppable. Hit that subscribe button to join me in turning public humiliation into private, ethical triumph. My father lost his entire empire because he mistook my quiet strength for failure. Your worth was only ever waiting to be remembered. Have you ever had to prove your worth to a family that underestimated you? Share your story in the comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe.